Hi, this is Janet Fitch, and it is noon on Wednesdays, so it must be Writing Wednesday, where I answer your writing questions, also questions about the writer's life, the writer's mind, stimulating curiosity, all the things that it takes to arm us up for the creative job ahead. And this week I wanted to talk more about I had questions on the motivational level, motivation, how to keep yourself sane, or whether you should. And as you know, you can always leave questions in the comments. I would be happy to answer them as we go along. And if you have questions for me in between times, go ahead and send them to me at my website, Janet Fitch Writes. Hi, Lily. JanetFitchWrites.com, and I can design a Writing Wednesday around your question. So I have 3 questions today, so I'll be able to. You don't have to work quite so hard to come up with ideas, but I'm sure that any question somebody has, 80% of us have the same question and just don't ask it. But first I wanted to talk a little bit about a documentary I saw last night called By Design, the Joe Karoff Story. So if you get Canopy, which is through the library, if you get Netflix, Karoff is spelled Caroff, By Design, and he was a poster designer. He designed famous movie posters and logos and stuff that everybody will recognize. He did the West Side Story poster, that image with the bold type and the kind of gritty type, which he talked about how he did it, and the fire escape. He did Manhattan, the title for Woody Allen's Manhattan, with the Manhattan skyline. He talked about he had done the Last Tango in Paris and created the typeface, and his thoughts about that. But what I wanted to talk about today was the how he and his wife also talked on the video, on the doc. Oh, you saw it. It's TCM. Yeah, okay, TCM. My daughter recorded it. Thanks, Jill. And the thing that I want to talk about today was he talked about being an artist and what it takes to be an artist, and the importance of exposing yourself to all the arts. I think somebody else who was talking about this incredible, he designed the posters and logos and typefaces for Fistful of Dollars, for, oh God, there were startlingly so many. The 007 logo, with the gun, the 007, and then the 7 is a gun. He designed that. And what he was talking about was that he stuffs his head. He goes to see art. He reads. He reads poetry. He goes to see theater and dance. And basically, a designer, he explained, was somebody who kind of was or somebody else described it this way: a designer is a great synthesizer of all kinds of influences, and you just, you stuff it in, and then it kind of goes into a great unconscious pool, and that when he gets an assignment to design for a book, he did book covers, really iconic book covers, which he got the assignment. He got the assignment by designing book covers for 12 books that didn't exist, and then his wife was his agent and went around and got interest in his book covers. But the idea was that you have this mass of unconscious material that you continue to absorb, and then when you are creating, it's like you aren't really, it's not really you sitting there like this, but more calming that ego self, whatever your psychological, framework or your beliefs about what the individual is. But you calm that superficial self down, and you allow this unconscious material that has been stewing, and you've been adding stuff, and it's compost. You're adding, and it's very rich and alive way down inside yourself. It's very rich and alive. And then when you get a movie to design like Karoff, or a chapter to write like you, then you can just open up what you already have and allow something to bubble up. It's not the creative act is not a forcing, but it's a trusting and an allowing. But if you don't prime that, if you don't, if anybody has ever tried to make a compost is a living thing, and you add different elements, and then you have to keep it watered, and you have to keep it turned, and you have to keep adding stuff to it. And so many people feel that by the time they're out of school, say out of college or out of their 20s or something, they feel that they've kind of gotten everything they need to get. And then they know who they are, they know what they know, and they just live off of that for the rest of their lives. And I'm here to tell you that the creative self doesn't work that way. The creative self has to continually expose yourself to the new, to keep that compost. If it dies on you, it gets stinky. I mean, anybody had a, compost that kind of went bad? You're not adding to it, you're not turning it, you don't have the right proportions or whatever. Chemistry side, you need to keep revivifying the pool of unconscious material. So you have your own problems, your own childhood, your own what you read when you were in high school and loved, the music that, in junior high was everything to you, high school, college, But even as an older person, if you are going to continue to be a live culture, if you want to continue to be a live culture in your head, in your spirit, in your creative abilities, you have to keep feeding that unconscious compost pile. And boy, watching this documentary, it was on TCM. I don't know if, how one streams it or links it or something. My daughter recorded it. But I'm sure Canopy, Kanopy, which you get through your library card. I bet Canopy has this doc. They're very good on documentaries. And to see what a lively guy he still was. This is Joe Karoff, Karooff, and he talks about where the name came from. It was actually like Koroviev or something when they came over from Russia, and Ellis Island was, decided to Americanize it in some cuckoo way that they always do, and I'm a beneficiary of that as well. The idea. I mean, he is 90. he's 100, he's 101. And he's still so intellectually lively, curious. He's not a, crabby old guy at all. He is really, you could tell he's a really fun guy, always has been. But his interest, his curiosity, his, the way he, the trust in the creative self, because he has a process. He has a process of not only creating and believing he can create from absolutely just, here's the movie, a few dollars more, he's done so many movie posters and movie campaigns, and but here's an idea, Manhattan, Woody Allen's Manhattan. So he watches it, I guess. But he says, oh, it's self-evident. I mean, the word itself, it was obvious that it would be the skyline of Manhattan. Well, obvious to him, because he had processed so much of not only type and how you feel about type, but other times and the subject matter and other work he had seen, the art that he's seen, the music he listens to. And I'm just urging everybody to put something good in there. Put something good in there. I recalled this. I read novels, but often I get a lot of juice out of art forms not my own, for my work. Seeing art, seeing dance, seeing theater, anything that's good, it really stimulates you. And why you get more excitement and more motivation out of that material than out of reading another novel, especially if it's not stimulating. I mean, there's a lot of fiction that we just read because it's comfy and makes you feel better in the moment. Well, that's therapy. That isn't fiction. What you're looking for is the things that excite you, that make you want to work. I'm reading right now, art books they often have really good text, really good writing, but you usually don't read the writing, you just look at the pictures. But there is a book of The Essential Duane Michals, Duane Michals, Michals. And Duane Michals was a photographer who did two things. One, he wrote, which wasn't done because, the photograph was supposed to carry all the information that you would need. But Michals wanted to say things that a photograph couldn't convey the whole thing. He wanted to let you know more about the emotion he was having, the thought he was having, than the photograph could carry. Any photograph could carry. So he outraged the photographic community. Many staid people, who were upset that he did writing. He wrote poetry with his photographs. He also did what we would think of as storyboard or a narrative, sequential photographs that tell a story. And that wasn't done because one photograph, the isolated image, was supposed to carry all the information, but it didn't carry quite what he wanted to do. So it's like a little movie with 5 or 6 or 7, 8 individual photographs. And I'm reading this Duane Michals, and I'm telling you, I'm getting all kinds of ideas, things that I didn't really think about in my reading of other people's fiction, but seeing this artist doing what he does with his photography is very erotic. And erotic in the way dreams are, surreal eroticism, which is an element of life that we often forget about, sadly. So I recommend the Cariff documentary, but more so just filling your mind, filling up your compost pile with art, with other art forms, as well as work that stimulates you, not just entertaining you, but that stimulates you as an artist. Think about the care and feeding of yourself as an artist. So here's a question that Malika has. If we have time, can you go through different revisions and what you handle in each? Yeah, I can. And my husband is writing a 28 revisions. He's writing he's doing a little video on 28 revisions you need to do, and I think you combined a lot of them. But I'd say first draft is just getting it, hacking the wood and trying to get from beginning to end, so you know what you got. The next revision is moving the bulk around. It's more sculptural. It's getting the dramatics right so that there's a lot of variety. There's good variety in the moods and shape of the scenes. You see what you need, what you don't need. You start cutting a lot of extraneous material. If you're somebody like me, a pantser, I write a lot of stuff that I inevitably don't need, because how do I know if I am going to need it or not until I write it? So I don't know what's in that drawer until I open it, So the second draft will be moving through and sculpting, shaping the dramatics. The third draft is often it's the sensuality of the world, making sure I've created a sensual world, interior and exterior, making sure I've set it somewhere, really set it. So checking, do I have smells and colors and shapes and textures, and you want at least one smell a page, a couple of sounds in a page, really think about the physicality of your story. And then the last draft, fourth draft, will usually be a polish language. So interesting verbs. Am I varying my sentence structure? Am I creating interesting metaphors? Am I using the language in a beautiful and interesting way? So that's sort of the rough four drafts. Here's another one. Mickey, hi Mickey. Do you have book signings coming up? Just blew through Marina M. Thank you. Couldn't put it down. Are you sure you're done with the series? Well, never say never. Do I have any signings coming up? No, but I can certainly, if you write to me through janetfitchwrites.com, I could send you a book plate that you can put in your book to you. So contact me directly. All right. So we have some questions today. Here is an interesting question. How do I express my own depression and alienation onto the words of a character in a fictional story that I'm writing? Oh, that's an interesting one. Okay. How do I express my depression and alienation onto the words of a character in a fictional story that I'm writing? Okay, depressed and alienated character. Have you ever read your journal from when you're depressed and alienated? It's pretty boring. I look at my own. I mean, I especially I had a year abroad in which I was very depressed. And I look at my journal from there, and it's just like something that nobody in the world would ever want to read. Ever, 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 ever. If you have a depressed character, the problem with depression is it's low energy. It's low energy. The bleakness can be useful. You can certainly write from a bleak point of view, Celine, Journey to the End of the Night, Long Day's Journey into Night, the O'Neill, he suffered from depression for sure. Some of it is in character orchestration. Not everybody can be depressed and alienated. You have to have other people in it. So if your central character can barely get out of bed, you have to have other characters who have a stronger, more urgent sense of the world. That will help you. People in general in fiction get very, in fiction and in life too, get bored with self-pitying characters. So if your character is going to be self-pitying, you might think seriously about giving them a good sense of humor. So it's not so repetition. Oh, poor me, poor me. If the character knows poor me, but I know you're sick of me and I'm sick of myself, but I can still be funny, witty, even if I'm terribly depressed. There is a wonderful poet here in LA named John Tottenham who has he has several books of poetry, but one of them is called The Inertia Variations, and that will give you a look at how to handle the inertia of depression, but in such a funny way that the work itself is not depressed. The character's depressed, but the work is anything but depressed. It's very lively and funny. It uses language in a good way. Now, if it's you are depressed and trying to write your depression, those are really useful things. Having other characters who make you get out of bed, have other characters who make you do things, will solve some of your problems. And then sometimes, what's depression? You have a character who, say in Paint It Black, I have a character who is a survivor of suicide. It's a very serious book, right? She does have, her attitude is she has a sense of humor, a very dark sense of humor, but she does. And she is kind of a bit feisty as well. So her depression isn't like of the saggy quality. It's more on the grim side, but funny. And she has friends, and she's not, completely alienated. Characters should interact with your character. That will be helpful. Having a character who's depressed and alienated and alone in a room. Read Dostoevsky. I mean, his characters are irritable. The depressed characters are irritable. The Underground Man, Notes from the Underground, check that out. Then the other thing that you might think of is when Beethoven was very depressed, when he was down, when things were very dark, is when he wrote his lighter music. And then he waited until he was feeling better to write his more serious stuff. I mean, that's interesting. I think it's hard to write lighter when you're feeling miserable, but maybe easier than writing into the misery. Not everybody's that sturdy psychologically, and you always want to keep your own head on straight or help. Writing is not therapy, but it is a place where you can do many things with the moods that you have. And I think that when you feel depressed, just watch out for the monotony and hitting the same thing. Because that's a lot of what depression is like, is you wake up and it's the same freaking day over and over again. But you can't, on the page, that's not something that is as interesting to the reader as what maybe that character in opposition to, say, a really cheerful character, or a character who gets you involved in something that you can't stop the clock. I think, you don't have to say we're depressed. I'm so depressed. I mean, that's my diary from, my 20s is like, oh, I'm so depressed. But you're going to express, you're writing a story. You're not writing a memoir. So things have to happen, and they can happen even to an alienated character, especially, an alienated character who is forced into a relationship with their cat-loving neighbor, who keeps, they can keep hearing them through the wall, and they just want to be left alone, but this character can't leave them alone for some reason. You can always it has to move, even if your character is depressed. So you have to kind of align the factors to make it move. Okay, here's another psychological question. Is it pathetic to live vicariously through fictional characters? How mentally healthy is it to write about someone I wish I could be, or spend this much time in my head? Is it pathetic? Well, this is a group of people here who do not think it's pathetic. We think it is really interesting to live vicariously through our characters. That's why we like doing what we're doing. That's why we like to read. This is why we like the whole project of making art, is that it is great to live vicariously through fictional characters. I'm never going to be a secret agent. Hey, guess what? I'm never going to jump out of a plane. I'm never going to swim sharks. I'm never going to, have an orgy at the slate date. Chances are minimal. I don't think it's pathetic at all. Welcome to the world of the arts. How mentally healthy is it to write about someone I wish I could be? Well, I think that a lot of fantasy is based on writing about people that we wish we could be, superheroes and what have you. A lot of somewhat trashy novels are certainly, if I was a model, if I was a race car driver, etc. Why not? I personally wouldn't want to be the people that I read about or write about. It's not my kick. I'm looking for troubled people that I can put pressure on and see what happens. So I have that's a little different. But how mentally healthy is it to write about someone I wish I could be? It's more mentally healthy to write about a person that you wish you could be and put them in situations that they have to prove themselves, and put them in situations that you would never want to find yourself in, and watch them do things differently than you would. I think that's totally mentally healthy. It doesn't always make for the best writing. You've got to make sure that there's enough conflict, that things aren't easy for them. Otherwise, why read it? But look at Ian Fleming. He read all those James Bond, things. I mean, he wasn't James Bond. I mean, he was, he had worked in the Secret Service for a while, but, he was hardly James Bond. He was creating a fantasy character for himself, and then these, terrible villains. Was it mentally healthy? Yeah. He didn't believe. I mean, what's the potential for mentally unhealthy storytelling? I think it's worse when people don't write. They just fantasize about these characters or read a bunch of comic books and get super into that fan base. I think writing then starts challenging you. You start thinking about, so what if I was this person? What would it be like to, be holed up under torture? I mean, you can fantasize about being brave, but then when you put them in that cell, then it becomes more real, and you have to deal with reality. So I think it's actually a very healthy thing to do. Or to spend this much time in my head. You know what? We all spend all of our time in our head, no matter what we're doing. Well, maybe not. If I'm in an axe battle with, some big bruiser in the 14th century, I'm not, in my head. My head is going, and you're just working on reflexes and stuff. But we're always ourselves. If you're spending too much time in your head as opposed to interacting with other people. It always depends on your own mental stability. I mean, if you are rocky, and I've certainly been rocky, I'm identifying with you. I'm not saying that you are the only person who deals with mental issues. If I'm rocky, I know that I need to balance the time I spend in my head, which is, a lot, with some social interaction, with sometimes just getting out of the house and taking a walk and noticing things, not just thinking my thoughts, but noticing, how many things can you remember that you saw on your walk when you get home? You make a list. How many things can you remember that you saw? How many dogs did that woman have? The guy with the orange shoes, the three women with their huskies, the middle one was wearing a jumpsuit. Really, the hawk, the overflight of the hawk, the four geese, getting out of your head is a separate art. Noticing. Tutankhamun says soccer is something that you don't think. You're not in your head. But it's funny how even in an action scene, you notice things. your head is active. You do notice, oh, here he comes. Oh, call, need someone on the left. Here he comes. You do notice things. So in writing, you have to keep the character's head alive. But getting out of your head is a professional hazard of being an artist of any kind, not of any kind, but certainly an artist who works by themselves in a room. You have to monitor that. If you start feeling kind of creeped out, or you start feeling like, you're being sucked down the bathtub drain. Okay, time to give a friend a call, or call Aunt Millie, or, go buy a new pair of socks that you need. Yeah, taking a break. It's the one gift, if you can give yourself this, is to be aware of your mood. Be aware of when you're pressing it too hard. Most of us don't have that problem. A lot of people have more, they don't work enough. But if you feel that you're spending too much time in your head, it's really important to have some social connection every day, especially feeling rocky. Just go out and interact with, someone. If you live alone, it's about getting out. And it doesn't mean going to a bar and getting, talking to these people. It sometimes just means getting out. Getting out into the actual real reality. Noticing the light, noticing the people. Go to the market, and having a couple of interactions, even in the aisles. You wonder why old people, sometimes are so chatty. That's what they're doing. They're monitoring their emotion and making sure they have some human contact every day. When you're feeling really solid, yeah, you can go up to a cabin in the woods and just work and without any interaction. But if you're not feeling that solid, if you're feeling kind of rocky, just keep in touch. Keep in touch with yourself. All right, last question. How do I keep my motivation for my book flowing when I'm losing interest in the plot and overall the whole story, but I don't want to give up on it? Oh, well, there's a real writer question. How do you keep up your motivation when I'm losing interest in the plot and the overall story, but don't want to give up on it? Well, I'll tell you a little secret. Tell you a little secret. If you dump that story and there's some other bright, shiny object and you start writing about that, you will get to a point where that too will pale and become wan, and you'll want to dump it and get on to the next thing. That'll be a bright, shiny object. So this is a very good question. In general, you want to, it's a fine line, because sometimes you need to abandon a book and you could sit there and flog it for 15 years and it still doesn't come together. So you have to notice, is the problem the book? Is the problem the subject? Or is the problem your connection with the book? Or your overall level of excitement about creating things? So first we talk about, like, Karoff, this John Karoff documentary that I had been talking about earlier, that you have to keep absorbing impressions from the outside world, exposing yourself to other artists, to other work, theater, dance, visual art, photography, music, this flood of the new is like oxygen in the water, that your creative self is going to die without that extra all the time. So that is very, very helpful, just because it's not, that's waking up the artist rather than the work, that you're bringing a fresher, more excited person to the work, because sometimes that lack of motivation, you're looking for it in the work, but it's really in you, that you're not keeping up, you're not putting enough oxygen in the tank, and your fish is just like, you know, I know fish don't pant, but you know what I mean. You need more input so you can do the output, especially if you can find work that stimulates you. Like I was saying, reading a book that makes you want to throw it down and write is better for you than a book you like, a book that makes you feel good, a book that, oh, this is really yummy. Whereas a book that, this is sort of, I don't know, it's kind of hard and awful, but I really am getting some ideas when I'm reading it. That's when you use what I call, there's a writer called Rob Roberge, who, you've heard me tell this story, some of you, who has his students write annotations, which is what the book is doing to your own process. Like, what are you getting from this book as a writer? It's not a book report. It's how is it affecting your writing? So that's what we're looking for in motivation. And then you bring this more enlivened person, more creative person, back to the book that you already had some connection with and some reason that you're writing it. And you can develop more of an excitement, because you're bringing more excitement in you. But sometimes stories have problems. And if you are in a book and you have bollocks yourself up, you've gone down a blind alley, and everything you do just seems to be moving the gravel this way and moving it this way, and it's no better this way than that way, then I'd say go back to the last place you really felt excited about the book and see if you made a wrong turn before you jettison. See if there's a problem in the book, or whether it's just you have lost motivation. If you've lost motivation, I'd say sparkle yourself up a bit, internally, psychologically, expose yourself to some interesting phenomena, and then bring a more energized artist to the project. So think about that. Think about, one of the things I did when I was a young writer that I really made a mistake. I read a bunch of these self-help writery books, how to write a book, how to write a novel. And one of them said, you take a set of index cards like this, and you plot out what has to happen in the book from beginning to end, and then scene by scene. And then you take these and you put them up on a bulletin board, and then you take the cards down and you write that scene, and then you take the next card down, you write that scene. Well, what happened to me is, by the time I'd taken the third card down, I just did not care at all about that story. And I realized that this method, the writing the plot, knowing the whole plot of the novel before I start, is not for me. I was bored by the time I took that third card down, because I'd basically fought my way through the book already, and I didn't want to do it again. I already, the discovery part is the fun part for me. That's the adventure, is like going through the cane field and suddenly you come upon, whatever. That's why I write. if I already know that there's a, you know, a 53 Chevy with a, you know, skeleton behind the wheel, then I don't want to write that book because I already wrote it in my mind. So if you say, I'm losing interest in the plot and overall story, maybe you need to let go of the plot that you think is going to be what it's about, and really just be in the moment of the writing and see what comes up instead of telling the book what to do. I know sometimes when I'm writing and I have an idea, my fellow writer Les Plesko, who was a fabulous writer and taught for 20 years at UCLA Extension, used to say, don't have ideas, we were in a writing workshop together. It's like, don't have ideas? How do you write without ideas? You know, I mean, it's a paradox. You know, you can't write without ideas. But what he meant was hold those ideas very, very lightly and notice what is actually happening rather than your idea. You know, be very quick to get rid of your idea if something better is happening on the page. Keeping motivation by keeping yourself alive as an artist. Keep yourself oxygenated. Don't overplot, or if you plot, you know, be quick to distance yourself and notice if you have a real story problem. And if so, go back to where it was working and go in it, maybe take it in a different direction. So here, that was a pretty good Writing Wednesday. I think I'll stop there unless there's last minute questions. Thank you for watching, and I wish you good writing. Bye.